can you just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us why is Microsoft even involved in solar panel circularity?
You know, Microsoft, we have sustainability goals that we want to achieve by 2030. One of the main goals is to be carbon negative.
Yeah.
And to do that requires a lot of clean energy.
Right.
That's why since we announced those goals 5 years ago, we've actually contracted about 34 gigawatts of power. So it's a mammoth task that we've embarked on, and we're pushing every day to get there. But a lot of that is going to be solar. And what we don't want is to fix one problem by creating another, which is the waste that can come from that at the end of life. So that's why we've really focused on how can we start to integrate circularity into our PPAs when we're talking to developers, when we're thinking about where the next source of power is going to come from to power our data centers. The other side of that is really a lot of the metals and minerals that go into these panels, whether it's aluminum, whether it's copper. These are actually valuable to our business as well, right? When we think about like domestic supply chain, well, all those metals I spoke about, those are going to building data centers, into the devices that go into our data centers. And if we can support the ecosystem that can avoid these from going to landfill, but put them back into circulation to help with the domestic supply chain, that's a win-win for us. So, we get the environmental benefits, but there's also that business benefit as well.
You talked a little bit about the intersection of Microsoft's commitment around data centers and powering those data centers with clean energy. Can you talk a little bit more about how that is driving the need for more circularity in solar?
As I mentioned, in just the last 5 years, 34 gigawatts, right? All of that is driven by this need for more power. We look at ourselves as good stewards of the business, where we want to make sure that as much of that power is clean towards our goals of 2030 to be carbon negative. And to do that is going to require a lot more of these panels. But what we don't want is to, while we're trying to get to that goal, encourage more mining, which is more carbon intensive. Also, at the same time, as I mentioned, right, we also need to be making sure that the supply chain of our devices, of the equipment that we're using in our data centers, is also as clean as possible. And so that's where that kind of intersection between the two come in.
That makes sense.
How can we decarbonize our data centers? Not just the data centers, the construction, the operation, what's in it, but also the power supply that goes into our data centers. And always going a step further, not just think of, is it clean energy, but what happens at the end of life for that source of clean energy, be it, in this case, the solar panels.
People are surprised, I think, when they hear Microsoft is really a leader on this circularity in solar. How did you come to this, and what role do you see Microsoft and clean energy buyers playing in the ecosystem that ultimately leads to more solar panels being recycled?
With any new market solution, the demand side plays a significant role, but it's one thing to just invest, but you need to think about how you build in and developing the market overall. And that's really where partnering with people like SIBA comes into place, partnering with folks like yourself on creating these solutions, right? So that, you want to start building the market today. And that involves putting capital in place, acquiring it within the PPA agreements today, and also supporting, technology providers like yourself, right? To make sure that we're not just supporting the low-hanging fruit in terms of people who are just doing scrap yards, but people who can actually use technology to extract the value from these panels in a sustainable way. So we look at it across the spectrum as how can we develop the market long-term across all those levers that I mentioned. It might seem hard and it might seem like, it could be too expensive, the solution. The actual marginal cost of implementing this solution, which could future-proof your business, which could help maintain your social license to operate, could actually be quite marginal. And we have work to do as an industry to get solar recycling to be cheaper than sending it to the landfill. So it's about, let's work together to actually build this ecosystem, build the market, and hopefully we're not in a bad position in 10, 20 years when we all of a sudden have to take these panels off the land and then we have nowhere to take them to.
Got it. Well, hey, it was great being on the panel with you.
Likewise.
And really great partnering with Microsoft. And thanks for taking the time out of your day to be part of this interview.